The Atlantic, that vast, unforgiving beast that swallowed empires and spat out legends. For 6 long years, it was the hunting ground of the Grey Wolves, Germany's U-boat fleet. Silent predators beneath the waves, they struck fear into the hearts of Allied convoys, sending thousands of tons of steel and souls to the ocean floor. But empires crumble, and wolves grow weary. As the spring of 1945 bloomed across a war-torn Europe, the roar of the Third Reich faded to a whisper. Hitler was dead. Berlin was rubble. And in the cold, churning depths, the hunters became the hunted no more. But the lost. This is the tale of what came after the torpedoes fell silent. Drawn from the salt-stained pages of diaries, the hushed confessions of survivors, and the unyielding resilience of men who stared into the abyss and lived to tell. It's the story of Wolfgang Hirschfeld, senior radio operator aboard U-234, a Type XB mine layer turned secret envoy to the rising sun of Japan. A man whose words, scribbled in the flickering glow of a submariner's lamp, capture the raw pulse of defeat turned to quiet defiance. Imagine it, the end of the world as they knew it, and the beginning of something unbreakable. May 8th, 1945, VE Day. But deep in the North Atlantic, 800 miles east of Newfoundland, U-234 plowed on through the fog-shrouded swells. She was no ordinary boat. At 279 feet long, her belly groaned under a cargo straight from the Devil's Forge. 100 tons of mercury for munitions factories, blueprints for the Me-262 jet fighter, infrared fuses that could turn night into day for the Luftwaffe, and 10 steel drums of uranium oxide, enough to fuel whispers of atomic fire in Tokyo's labs. Her captain, Johann Theodor Fehler, a Knight's Cross holder with eyes like chipped flint, had orders from Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz himself. Deliver this lifeline to Imperial Japan and return with rubber, quinine, and whatever scraps of empire remained. Wolfgang Hirschfeld, 29 years old, wiry as a periscope wire, hunched over his radio set in the bowels of the boat. His fingers, calloused from years tapping Morse code through storms and depth-charge barrages, danced across the keys. He'd been at this since '39, first on U-109, where the happy times of 1941 saw them bag 7 ships off Freetown, Sierra Leone, the crew cheering as oil slicks bloomed like black roses on the sea. Back then, it was glory. Fresh bread from the galley, jazz crackling over the BBC intercepts. The thrill of the kill. We were kings of the deep, Wolfgang would later write in his diary, hidden from prying eyes under a false panel. Invincible. Until the hedgehogs came. Hedgehogs. Those cursed Allied mortars that turned the ocean into a graveyard of echoes. By '43, the wolf packs were bleeding. Enigma cracked. Hunter-killer groups closing in. Aircraft with eyes like hawks. Wolfgang's first boat, U-109, limped home from the Azores with a hull scarred by ramming from a British corvette. Friends lost. Swallowed whole in fireballs of high explosive. "The sea doesn't forgive," he scrawled one night, ink smudging with sweat. "It takes and takes until you're hollow." But U-234 was different. A ghost ship, slipping north through the Norwegian fjords in late March, evading the RAF's long-range patrols. Bergen was a frenzy. Cranes swinging like gallows, loading crates stamped with the Reichsadler's eagle. Japanese officers in crisp uniforms inspected the haul, their faces masks of desperation. Fehler shook hands with the liaison, a man named Tomonaga Hideo, who boarded with 2 Messerschmitt engineers, Wenneker and Pfaff, bound for Tokyo's war machine. "We carry the future," Fehler told his crew, voice steady as the schnorkel mast. But Wolfgang, eavesdropping from the radio shack, felt the weight. The war was a corpse already. This was scavenging its bones. Then, the 8th. A signal from BDU, Befehlshaber der U-Boote in Kristiansand. Cease offensive operations against Allied shipping. Fight only in self-defense. Donitz's voice, crackling over the ether, ordered the fleet to surface, to fly white flags, to end the nightmare. Wolfgang transcribed it word for word, his hand trembling not from fear, but from the finality. The Führer is dead, the message confirmed. Suicide in the bunker, Berlin encircled, Japan alone. The crew gathered in the control room, faces gaunt under the red battle lamps. Machinist Heinz Schomburg, a Berliner with a laugh like gravel, cracked a flask of Ersatz Schnapps. "To the ghosts we leave behind," he toasted. But eyes were wet. Engineer Erich Hirschfeld, Wolfgang's own brother, transferred aboard for this run, clutched a locket with his wife's photo. "What now, Wolfie?" he whispered. "Home? Or the camps?" Feeler's decision came swift. Continue to Japan, honor the cargo's pact with the Emperor. But 2 days later, May 10th, another signal. All U-boats are to surrender to the nearest Allied port. No choice. The cargo, that uranium, those secrets, belong to the enemy now. Orders from Donitz. Scuttle if necessary, but save the men. U-234 altered course west, toward the American coast, surfacing at dawn on the 14th, periscope sweeping the horizon like a wary eye. There, smoke trails. The destroyer, USS Sutton, a greyhound of the deep, closing fast. American warship signals. Heave to and prepare to be boarded. Wolfgang relayed, voice flat. Feeler nodded. Conning tower hatch clanging open to the raw salt wind. White ensign hoisted, tattered, and improvised from a bedsheet. The Sutton pulled alongside, her deck bristling with guns and grim-faced sailors in life jackets. Lieutenant William H. Bland, the boarding officer, swung across on a Jacob's ladder, 45 in holster, eyes scanning for tricks. "Capitan Feeler?" he barked in clipped English. Feeler stood tall, iron cross glinting on his tunic. "Ja, we surrender unconditionally." The Americans swarmed aboard, 70 strong, rifles at port arms. They found no fight, only exhaustion. Wolfgang watched from the bridge as they inventoried the hold. The uranium drums, the Me-262 plans, the disassembled V-2 components that could have changed the Pacific's tide. "What is this?" an officer muttered, tapping a crate of infrared devices. Wolfgang said nothing, but in his diary that night, aboard the Sutton as a prisoner. "They took our weapons, our pride, but not our souls. We surfaced, and the world saw us not as monsters, but as men." U-234 was towed to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, under guard. The crew, 84 souls, including the 2 Japanese passengers who chose ritual suicide over capture, disembarked into a new hell. Camp Miles Standish, a POW stockade near Boston. Barbed wire under New England skies, Red Cross parcels of spam and cigarettes, interrogations that peeled back layers like onion skins. "You carried the bomb?" A Navy intel officer pressed Wolfgang, chain-smoking Luckies. "Uranium? For what?" Wolfgang shrugged, feigning ignorance. "Medical supplies, Herr Leutnant. For hospitals." A lie wrapped in truth. The cargo's full weight would fuel America's Manhattan Project. But that irony was lost in the fog of war's end. But not all wolves came quietly to the fold. In the remote fjords of Scotland's far north, Loch Eriboll, a jagged scar in the Sutherland coast, 10 miles of deep, black water ringed by heather and mist, 33 U-boats gathered like supplicants at a funeral. From May 11th to 21st, they slipped in under escort. U-278 from Narvik, her conning tower scarred by a Liberator's bombs. U-1104, fresh from the Faroes, her crew whispering prayers to forgotten gods. Admiral Sir Max Horton, the U-boat slayer himself, orchestrated from Scapa Flow. The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril, Churchill had confided. Now it was over. Oberleutnant Heinz-Eugen Eberbach of U-295 arrived on the 13th, his boat trailing the Canadian destroyer HMCS Nene like a chastened hound. Fog thick as pea soup, nerves frayed. A miscalculation, Eberbach swore it was the current, and U-295 rammed the Nene's starboard side, punching a 10-foot gash. Alarms wailed, water surged. "Gott im Himmel!" Eberbach bellowed from the bridge. The Nene listed, but held. Her crew returned fire with very pistols, star shells bursting like false dawns. Eberbach backed off, white flag frantic. "Accident!" he radioed. The Canadians, cursing in French-English patois, accepted it. No blood spilled that day, but the tremor lingered, a last gasp of the old war. In Lisa Halley, Northern Ireland, Lough Foyle's grim harbour, 116 boats anchored in serried ranks, periscopes like tombstones, crews stripped of sidearms, ordered to paint over swastikas with Royal Navy grey. Disarmament was a ritual of humiliation. Torpedo tubes flooded, mines diffused, code books consigned to the depths. Yet amid the salt and shame, flickers of humanity. British guards shared tea and bully beef. One Tommy, a Liverpool docker's son, traded cigarettes for tales of the deep. "You lot gave us hell off Scapa," he said to a U-805 watch officer. "But fair play, you're tougher than you look." For Wolfgang and his brothers in steel, the camps were a limbo of lectures and labor. At Fort Devens, Massachusetts, they cleared brush under GI overseers, mines wandering to wives in Kiel, children in bombed-out Hamburg. Eric, Wolfgang's brother, fell ill with pneumonia. Too many years breathing diesel fumes. "Hold on, Eric," Wolfgang urged, smuggling extra blankets from the laundry. "The war's done. We're the survivors." By autumn, as leaves turned crimson, word came, Operation Deadlight. Northern Ireland's coast, November 1945. Position 56 degrees, north 10 degrees west, 130 miles northwest of Lisa Halley, in the graveyard of the Atlantic. One by one, the boats were towed out. U-143, U-278, U-114, ghosts in towlines. The Royal Navy's executioners waited. HMS Tyrian, submarines like HMS Templar, even carrier-borne Hellcats for the spectacle. Demolition charges wired into engine rooms, bilges rigged with cordite. Crews, former wolves, now spectators, watched from deck rails, wind whipping their greatcoats. First to go, U-107, a type Waithisi, her hull still whispering of patrols off Gibraltar. Towed to the mark, charges set. A muffled thump. Then the sea erupted. White foam clawing skyward, steel shrieking as the bow lifted, stern plunging like a diver's knife. She rolled once, graceful in death, then vanished in a vortex of bubbles. "Our ladies," a boatswain muttered, crossing himself, "sent to sleep with the fishes they hunted." Bad weather claimed half before the charges could. U-3112 foundered under tow, her skeleton later snagged by trawlers. By February 46, 121 were gone, sunk by gun, by torpedo, by air. Only 30 spared, 10 each for Britain, America, Russia. U-234 among the American prizes, tested at Portsmouth until 48, then scuttled off Cape Cod, her secrets long extracted, her uranium a footnote in Hiroshima's shadow. Repatriation came in waves, like the tide they once mastered. Wolfgang and Eric sailed home on the SS Argentina in July 46, docking at Bremerhaven, amid ruins and ration cards. Germany was a husk, wives widowed in error, cities like Dresden's ghosts. But the U-boat men rebuilt. Feeler became a fisherman in the Baltic. his knight's cross gathering dust. Eberbach, the rammer of Nene, turned teacher in Schleswig-Holstein, schooling boys on navigation's perils. Wolfgang, he penned his diary into a book. Hirschfeld, the story of a U-boat NCO, not for glory, but to remember. We were not butchers, he wrote in the final entry, but brothers bound by the deep. In defeat, we found our valor, not in kills, but in survival. What happened to the German U-boats after WW2? They sank into legend, scuttled, scrapped, studied. But their crews? They surfaced. They endured. In the quiet after the storm, they proved that even wolves can learn to walk on land. Heads high, scars as medals. The Atlantic keeps its secrets, but tonight it yields this one. Resilience is the truest weapon.